Trustee Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Mills. Trustee Newell.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present, we do have a quorum. Purpose of the meeting, Mr. Norris? This is regarding the 2020 proposed budget.
And yes, sir. By state law, municipalities must hold a budget public hearing at their first meeting of the month of December, which is what we're doing. This budget was the subject of a special finance committee meeting, which was really a budget workshop, which was held on November 13th for multiple hours. In terms of highlights of the budget, typically we refer mostly to the general fund. General fund revenues are expected to be $59,450,490. Expenses, $62,666,750. The village is using $3.2 million in fund reserves to fund only capital items, rolling stock, to get caught up on those purchases. The budget is balanced as submitted, and that is the highlights.
Okay, do any of the board members have any comments or questions on the budget? We went through this before. Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Anybody? Well, seeing none, Chair, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have a motion carried. We are adjourned. The board meeting will start at 8 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
O'clock, rather, yeah. Well, Member, can you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Trustee Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Mills. Trustee Newell.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present, can everybody please rise? Trustee Palafis, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Palafis. Move on to item number 3. This is recognition of the audience. This is time if someone has a question or concern for an item that is not on the agenda this evening, would like to address the village board and the village staff. Now's the time to come forward. Going once, twice, 3 times, and move on. Chair to accept a motion to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2019 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any additions or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have a motion carried. Move on to the consent agenda. Chair to accept a motion.
Set the motion for omnibus vote from A Alpha through S Sierra.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The items on the omnibus vote are the following. A, approval of the agenda. B, approval of the schedule of bills for December 2nd, 2019, the amount of $2,848,022.36. C, request board approval of an ordinance granting a special use to Bright Hope International owner and Ash, Anos, Friedman, and Logan LLC applicant, 2017 Stonington Avenue and Hoffman Estates. D, request board approval of an ordinance granting a special use amendment to Bright Hope International owner and Ash, Anos, Friedman, and Logan LLC applicant, 2060 to 2080 Stonington Avenue and Hoffman Estates. E, request board approval of an ordinance adopting the budget for all corporate purposes of the Village of Hoffman Estates, Cook and Kane Counties, Illinois, in lieu of the appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2020 and ending on the 31st day of December 2020. F, request board approval of an ordinance authorizing the levy and collection of taxes for the corporate and municipal purposes of the Village of Hoffman Estates for the fiscal year beginning on the first day of January 2020 and ending on the 31st day of December 2020. G, request board approval of a resolution abating a portion of the 2019 tax levy Series 2015A and 2015C taxable general obligation bonds. H, request board approval of a resolution abating a portion of the 2019 tax levy Series 2015B general obligation bond. I, request board approval of a resolution abating a portion of the 2019 tax levies Series 2017A and 2017B general obligation bonds. Move on to J. Request board approval of a resolution abating a portion of the 2019 tax levy Series 2018 general obligation refunding bond K, request board approval of a resolution abating a portion of the 2019 tax levy, Series 2019 General Obligation Refunding Bond. L, request board approval of the FY 2020 through FY 2027 Capital Improvements Program. M, request board approval to enter into a settle agreement with the Hoffman Estates Acquisitions, LLC. N, request board approval to enter into a settlement agreement with the TIF Hoffman Estates, Illinois, LLC, and Community Union School District 300. O, request board approval of a mutual aid agreement between the Village of Hoffman Estates and other Mavis communities for emergency medical and transportation services. P, request board approval of the 2019 Village of Hoffman Estates Sustainability Plan. Q, request board approval of a change order to the contract with Water Well Solutions of Elburn, Illinois, for the abandonment of Well 9 in the amount of $25,609.22 for a total not to exceed $123,918.22. This is the well that's on Charleston in Winston Knolls. Our request board authorization to award contract for tower painting and miscellaneous work at Stonington Boulevard Tower T2 and Huntington Boulevard Tower T4 to LC United Painting Company, Sterling Heights, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $700,000. S, request board authorization to award contract for purchase of an articulated wheel loader for sidewalk snow removal, including accessories, to Russo Power Equipment, Schiller Park, Illinois, low bid, in an amount not to exceed $55,472. Does anybody have any questions or wish to pull any of these items? Seeing none, we do have a motion, and a second. Can you poll the board, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. Move on to 6, President's Report. We do have a proclamation, Madam Clerk? Who's got it?
Yes, I do. I have it. Office of the Mayor Proclamation. Whereas the holiday season between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day is one of the deadliest and most dangerous times in America roadway due to increase in impaired driving. Since 1981, every president of the United States has demonstrated the commitment to prevent impaired driving by proclaiming December as National Impaired Driving Prevention Month. And whereas operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or certain medications can have devastating consequences. In 2017, more than 10,000 people died in alcohol-related crashes in the United States, accounting for 29% of all traffic fatalities. Drunk or drugged drivers experience diminished judgment and decreased motor coordination and reaction time, putting at grave risk for passengers, pedestrians, and other drivers. Whereas awareness is not just limited to the holiday season. However, hundreds of Americans die each year in alcohol-related incidents. Drunk driving laws make it illegal nationwide to drive with a blood alcohol count, BAC, of more than 0.08%. Know your limits and don't put anyone in danger this holiday season. Be it therefore resolved that William D. McLeod, acting under or by virtue of the authority vested in him by the Constitution of the State of Illinois and the laws of the Village of Hoffman Estates, hereby proclaim December 2019 as National Impaired Driving Prevention Month in the Village of Hoffman Estates, and urge all Hoffman Estates residents and businesses to join in this observance by committing the practice of impaired-free, safe driving conditions at all times.
Chair will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
This motion is second. This continues to be a problem in spite of all the publicity and the concerns out there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have a motion carried. Dr. Savigi, will you accept this? Thank you for the work of your department, and thanks the police department also. Thank you. I do have an appointment, Susanna Padilla to the Youth Commission and the Village Green Ad Hoc Commission. Chair will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. We interviewed her a couple weeks ago. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have a motion carried. One resignation, Robert Neal from the Emerging Technology Advisory Commission.
So moved with regrets.
Second.
So motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have a motion carried. We do have an event coming up this Saturday, December 7th, for a morning of winter craft making for young children. This free event, which runs from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., is perfect for kids aged 3 to 9. Parents and guardians must be present for the duration of the event. To register, call 847-781-2606. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving week. On Tuesday, the 26th, most of us were able to make the Brookdale Holiday Event. They always put on a great event there at Brookdale and Senior Living. And on Saturday, the 30th, most of us once again were able to attend the Eagle Court of Honor for Christopher Joel Cabalfin at Poplar Creek Banquets on Higgins Road. And this afternoon, their graduation at St. Hubert's that Clerk Romanoff and I were able to attend. And that's all I have at this point. Move on to trustee comments. Start with trustee Palafis.
I don't have any comments tonight, sir.
Okay, trustee Newell.
Okay, not too many. November 20th, did the Jawa meeting, and on the 21st, did the dog therapy. It was really nice to see how excited the kids get, and those dogs are huge. They're little ponies, I'm sorry, but they are. On the 23rd, the tree lighting, and congrats to the commission. Once again, another beautiful job and great weather for it. And on the 26th, as the mayor had mentioned, Brookdale, kind of a meet and greet, which they always put on a very nice event. And on the 30th, and I hope I don't mess up his name, we stopped in for Eagle Scout Cabalfin? I think that's the way he says his name?
Cabalfin?
Cabalfin? Okay. That one. That's where we were. And hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and that's it.
Thank you. Trustee Gata.
Okay, on Wednesday, November 20th, attended the Senior Harvest Luncheon here at Stonegate Banquet Center. Boy, what a great turnout. They had over 100 people that attended that. And again, thank you to the Senior Citizens Commission for putting on an excellent affair. Then on Saturday, the 23rd, attended the ribbon cutting at Best Dental and Spa, which is brand new, and the address was 2505 West Gulf Road. And as far as equipment, I mean, they have up-to-date equipment on everything. They even can make implants, right there. I don't know. I was impressed with all of their equipment. Also, that we attended the Hoffman Estates Friendship Tree Lighting, and congratulations to the Celebration Committee. They always do a good job. Then on Tuesday, the 26th, Brookdale Holiday Event, which is always fun to go to, and that's on 1515 Barrington Road. And then on Saturday, November 30th, we attended the Eagle Court of Honor for Christopher Joel Cabalfin, I had trouble also, at Poplar Creek Banquets at 2354 Higgins. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, trustee Arnett.
Okay, I also attended the tree lighting on the 23rd. My compliments to Clerk Romanoff and her commission staff for a job well done. And I also attended the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Christopher Cabalfin. That's all I have.
Okay, trustee Stanton.
On the 23rd, I was able to attend the ribbon cutting for the grand opening of Best Dental Spa at 2505 West Gulf Road. My wife and I did attend the Friendship Tree lighting ceremony, and trustee Palafis, you could have mentioned that because you were there as well.
I was there.
On the 25th, I was at the dare graduation at Lincoln Elementary School on Maureen Drive. On the 26th, I briefly stopped by at the Brookdale for their holiday event. And on the 30th, I also joined the others at the Eagle Court of Honor ceremony for Christopher Joel Cabalfin at the Poplar Creek Banquets facility. That's it.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to C, Village Manager's Report.
Nothing to add tonight, sir.
D, Village Clerk's Report.
I didn't transfer over my FOIAs. I know you guys are all sad. My FOIAs and my passports for my pre-minutes to these, so I'll do it next meeting.
Sounds good to me. Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. Planning, Building, and Zoning, trustee Stanton.
We'll start off the night on December 9th, 2019 at 7 o'clock. Have a roll call. Once we've established a quorum, we'll have approval of the minutes of November 11th, 2019. We have one item under new business, and that's request by the Hoffman Estates Park District for site plan approval for park enhancements and parking lot expansion at the South Ridge Community Park at 1450 Freeman Road. We then have our three reports for information only, which is the Planning Division Monthly Report, Code Enforcement Division Monthly Report, and the Economic Development and Tourism Monthly Report. We will then have a President's Report. We have nothing in either other or items in review, and then we will adjourn.
Thank you. General Administration and Personnel, Trustee Arnett.
Thank you. Immediately following the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee, we will call to order the General Administration and Personnel Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates on December 9th, 2019. We'll begin with a roll call, and then we'll move into approval of minutes for November 11th, 2019. Under new business, we do have one new item, request approval of 2020 Village Board and Standing Committee meetings schedule. Then we'll move on to reports for information only. Number 1 is Cable TV Monthly Report. Number 2 is the Human Resources Management Monthly Report. Number 3 is the Legislative Operations and Outreach Monthly Report. We will then go into President's Report if there's anything in other or items in review, and then we will call for an adjournment.
Thank you. I'll move on to Transportation and Road Improvement, Vice Chairperson Stanton. You want to tell us what's going on?
Sure. After General Administration and Personnel, I believe Chairperson Karen Mills will be here, and we will then have a roll call. After that, approval of the minutes of November 11th, 2019. There is no items up for review that night, but there is a report, and that's the Transportation Division Monthly Report. We then have a possibility for more President's Report, and we have nothing in other or items in review, and then adjourn.
Thank you. Public Works and Utilities, Trustee Newell.
Okay, immediately following Transportation and Road Improvement, we will have the Public Work and Utility Committee on December 9th. We'll have a roll call, approval of minutes from November 25th, 2019. And at this time, under reports, information only, we have 2. One of them will be Department of Public Works Monthly Report. 2 will be Department of Development Services Monthly Engineering Report of the Transportation and Engineering Division. If we have anything additional under President's Report, nothing under other items in review, and then we will call for an adjournment.
Thank you. Public Health and Safety, Trustee Gata.
Yes, immediately following Public Works and Utilities Committee, we will call to order the Public Health and Safety Committee. We will have a roll call. Approval of the minutes of November 25th, 2019. We have nothing under new business and reports for information only. Number 1, the Police Department Monthly Report. 2, Health and Human Services Monthly Report. 3, Emergency Management Coordinator Monthly Report. 4, Fire Department Monthly Report. A President's Report, if we have anything there. Other items in review, and we would adjourn.
Thank you. Finance, Trustee Palafis.
Yes, sir. Immediately following Public Works and Utilities, we will call to order the members of the commission, and then we will approve the minutes for November 25th, 2019. We have 3 items in our new business. The first is a request for approval of a resolution establishing higher back rates for police and fire personnel for the period January 1 through December 31, 2020. Item number 2 has an A and a B, which is a request for the approval of A, 2020 renewal of the village's property and casualty insurance program through the Safety Liability Insurance Pool, also known as SLIP, and B, 2020 renewal of the village's workers' compensation underground storage tank and liquor liability coverages through Alliant Maisro Insurance Services. Item number 3 is a request authorization to waive bidding and purchase a Kubota worksite vehicle with snow blower, salt spreader, broom and blade attachments for the Sears Center Arena from Russo Power Equipment, Schiller Park, Illinois, and an amount not to exceed $42,416. And then we will accept the information-only reports from the Finance Department, the Information Systems Department, and the Sears Center Department monthly reports. We will also have a President's Report if need be, items and other if approached, no items to review, and we will adjourn.
Thank you. And move on to 7, Planning and Zoning Commission reports. Chairperson Combs, you were pretty busy the last week or so, huh?
We were. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for approval a request by Kimley Horn applicant and Amita Health Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health owner for special use under Section 9-5-11-G-5 of the Hoffman Estates Municipal Code and a preliminary and final site plan amendment to permit an expansion of a behavioral health hospital located at 1650 Moon Lake Boulevard with 5 conditions. Vote was 11 ayes.
Chair will accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any questions from the village board on this item?
I just have one question,
Trustee
and
Stanton.
that is parking. Is there going to be still sufficient parking with the expansion?
The expansion doesn't add anything to the parking demand. It just will allow them to expand into a larger space rather than being compressed into a smaller one.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? See nothing else, can you pull the board, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for approval a request by Charles Vincent George Architects applicant and 1400 Gannon Road LLC owner for a preliminary and final plat of subdivision for the property located at 1400 Gannon Road, 11 A's.
Chair will accept the motion.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion, a second. Any questions on this item? Trustee Stanton.
This is going to be done in 2 phases, this whole project, correct?
Correct,
And the first phase is building a new bank.
right.
And the new bank is going to be built where the parking is by the fence yard there, by the neighbors' yards?
Right.
And where are they going to take that parking? They're just taking it away, is that while they're building the new facility?
There still should be sufficient parking around the facility.
And that would be on the upper level? There's an upper level and a lower level right now at the bank. The upper level is closest to the bank for parking. The lower level is, I guess, down for mostly the employees to park, so that,
Okay, what they're going to be doing is opening up the east entrance, which has been closed, so that there's the parking spaces that were on the east.
yeah,
are
that's
now
like 3
available.
spaces.
Well, it's handicap spaces, so that's key.
Peter,
I
you,
can also add, part of the construction phasing plan is to modify the existing drive-through area at the existing bank and provide some parking there for employees.
is there still going to be parking on the west side while they're building this?
No, because that area will be all under construction. So they'll accommodate the parking they need on the, either in the paved area where the drive-through is. They'll reduce down to, I think it's 2, the architects here, I think it's 2 drive-through lanes during construction. And they'll be able to use it, there's a lot of pavement there, they'll be able to stripe. They've got a striping plan for that temporary condition.
Okay, I didn't notice that, and that's good to know.
It's not clear on the plans because that's the interim, in-between plan while construction is occurring.
Do they have the right, or do they have any agreement with Acura in case they needed parking on Acura's property there?
I do not believe there's any cross-parking agreements. Acura, for the most part, fills that lot all the time. They share.
Not so much lately.
Well, not always, but it fluctuates. But yeah, I don't believe there's any cross-parking ability there.
When did they feel that they were going to start the project?
I assume in the spring, as soon as the weather breaks is kind of what they're targeting at this point.
And how much grading is going to have to be done? I mean, are they going to be adding soil to that lower level?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a challenging site because the bank has the
Yeah, it's
west,
very
the west
challenging.
End, yeah, the west entrance is obviously lower than the east side.
Correct.
So yeah, there's
Building
quite a
up
bit.
the retaining wall and the fence
Can
area.
the gentleman from B of O come up and explain what you're doing here? I think there's some questions to the board members.
I'm Jake Lidzinski with Wolpert. I'm the civil designer.
My name is Mark Noski from Charles Vincent George Architects.
So as far as grading, yeah, we're pretty much going to be raising up the western side of the site somewhat temporarily, and then we will construct the new bank And then once that side, the western side is essentially complete, the existing bank will shut down. And then until the new future retail use is approved and whatnot, that will essentially sit as a grass lot for the time being.
Do you have to wait for the soil to compact before you can build on that new soil that you're planning on putting in?
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of time that we'll have to wait.
And is there going to be a larger fence, since that property is going to be higher up, to delineate the neighborhood from the bank?
There will be a 7-foot board-on-board, most likely clear stained fence along the west end that'll get constructed.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay, any other questions? So, the questions, we do have a motion, and a second. Can you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Mills? I'm sorry. Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for explaining. Appreciate it.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for approval a request by Charles Vincent George Architects applicant and 1400 Gannon Road LLC owner for special use under section 9-8-2-C-10 of the Hoffman Estates Municipal Code and a preliminary and final site plan for a freestanding financial institution bank on the property located on Lot 2 of Hoffman Estates Retail Subdivision with 11 conditions. Vote was 11 ayes.
Chair will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion, and a second. Any questions on this item? See no questions. Can you pull the board, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for approval a request by Charles Vincent George Architects applicant and 1400 Gannon Road LLC owner to consider a preliminary site plan for a multi-tenant retail building on the property located at Lot 1 of Hoffman Estates Retail Subdivision with 3 conditions. Vote was 11 ayes.
Chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any questions on this? Trustee Stanton?
Yeah, I forgot to ask one question. Used to be tenants on the second floor of that building. Are there tenants still there or not?
Gentlemen? You can talk to the microphone because we're showing this on TV.
Yeah, again, my name is Mark Noski from Charles Vincent George Architects. There are no tenants on the second floor, then it's basically occupied by the bank on the first floor at this point.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else, Trustee Stanton?
Nope, that's it.
Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none, can you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for approval a request by the Village of Hoffman Estates for text amendments to Chapter 9 of the Hoffman Estates Municipal Code regarding regulation of cannabis uses as presented in staff report number 2, including maps 1, 2, and 4. Vote was 10 ayes, 1 nay. I'm the 1 nay vote, and it was solely on the basis that I didn't think we should put an overlay on unimproved property because I think it would stymie the marketability of that lot, and whoever buys it can always come in and ask for that change to put it back on.
Okay, Chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Is there any discussion? Trustee Stanton?
Once again, is it my understanding that the red squiggle lines are all the property that could possibly be used for placement of a, okay.
Can you put that up on the TV, Pete? Sure.
And also, if you noticed, we did not approve map number 3, so that's why there's not a sequential numbering, only 1, 2, and 4.
I did notice that. Was there any discussion regarding not having a retail establishment within like 1,500 feet of churches or synagogues or places of worship or places of school?
There was at our first meeting on that. I do believe there's some verbiage in the statute itself, but they thought that it would leave more flexibility to the commission and the trustees. If a special use came in, we could kind of deal with it on a one-on-one basis.
Okay.
Any other questions from anybody? Trustee Gata?
Just what trustee Stanton was saying, I was under the impression that as far as it was established already, that either be the schools or synagogues or any church or whatever, that it was established, a minimum would be 1,500 feet.
You want to address that? Yeah.
What does the state mandate on that, Pete?
Sure, I can explain that a little better. The state law does not address schools, daycare centers, uses such as that. The state law only mandates a separation between two dispensaries of 1,500 feet. It left to the municipal zoning regulations the ability to deal with other location issues. What was resolved through the public hearing process, starting with the committee discussion at the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee in October, was that we would use an overlays district approach, which basically allows us to designate the actual parcels that are acceptable on a specific map. In doing that, we were conscious of schools and daycare centers and uses like that and avoided those sites on these maps. And because we were using the specific overlay district approach, we did not do the duplicative step of also having a distance requirement. We found that there are a number of locations in town where the distance requirement would probably not accomplish what we were trying to achieve. There were areas that may end up getting omitted from being allowed, and there were other areas where there'd be gaps where we may be allowing a dispensary where the board may not be comfortable with that. If we tried to use churches, daycare centers, schools, just the way they're distributed throughout our community, just the way the community is laid out. We looked at that extensively. A lot of different communities have taken different approaches, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that many towns have different physical configurations geographically. So the overlay district approach seemed to make really the most sense and really allows the board to choose the properties that make the most sense and actually make that decision.
Is there, every applicant, this will be a special use for an application?
Correct, and that was the other overriding factor, was no matter where you propose something, it has to go through a special use process. So every
Board has the
request.
ultimate control.
Right, and a special use can be denied if it's not, if not felt to be appropriate.
Mr. Norris?
And Trustee Gata, the other thing is what we've found is that a neighboring community, for example, could put their district right up next to our border and not pay any attention to our schools, daycares, churches, and so on. But we can only regulate what's in our community, and we can't regulate outside our community. So as Peter said, the special use process gives the board the final ability to see if they're comfortable with the location.
So we would have that all in front of us at the time and go, okay.
Yes, sir.
Explain that to Barrington Hills and South Barrington, that they can't do
I think
that?
I think we've tried for like the last 30 years, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
22 that I know of.
Any other questions on this? Now, this is basically, if I understand this, you have basic language, and it's being refined, is that correct, Mr. Corporation Counsel, to incorporate the desires of the board and the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, there's two things. One is that there's a trailer bill that just passed and I think is in the process of being signed. So we do have that time lapse in there. And also, we're going to wait until this board determines whether they like what has been recommended by the zoning board before we prepare in final form the ordinance, which will be brought back to this board for final approval.
Will that be in 2 weeks?
It can be if you wish.
Mr. Norris?
In the memo that Mr. Januris sent to the board dated November 22nd, there was an Exhibit A and an Exhibit B. Exhibit A is not the language that went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is the contemplated changes. And then if you look especially at the second page, there's a lot of strikeouts. That's because as legal looked at it, they felt that we should, as a community, defer to the state law versus writing it in, because the state law is in the process, as Mr. Jern has said, it's just been amended, and it's likely to be amended again. And if we have regulations that are more restrictive than the state law, we're out of conformance. We can't do that in this issue. So that's why all the changes are being made. And we would ask that if there's a motion on this to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission report, not the ordinance, but the report, but that it be subject to the language that's shown in this memo in Exhibit A, because that will be the direction for us for the final ordinance.
So the state can always change regulations all the time. I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
Are we fairly confident that we'll be in compliance with the suggested changes, at least for the moment?
Well, historically, there's two ways of enacting ordinances at the village level when those particular ordinances are trying to be meshed with the state law. So in some instances in the past, the village ordinance would restate what was in the statute. And so the state statute and the village ordinance would basically be identical. Those ordinances could either be enforced by way of enforcing a state law or by enforcing a local ordinance. There's another way that we sometimes have enacted ordinances to incorporate state law. And some of those would be the village's traffic code, which adopts the state traffic code. So we do have violations of traffic rules of the road that can be charged either under a state statute, in which in court usually a state's attorney would prosecute that, or those charges can be brought under a village ordinance, in which case the village prosecutor prosecutes those cases. We also incorporate many of our building codes by reference. Therefore, we don't republish within our ordinance book all of the international or national building codes. We simply reference them and incorporate them into our ordinance. And then the issue becomes, do we incorporate them as they are amended in the future, or do you incorporate them just as they presently exist? And of course, when incorporating, whether it be state laws or regulations for building, we usually incorporate those as they may be amended. So if the state changes one of the rules of the road, our ordinance changes right along with it when the state law changes. The difficulty comes up when the village's home rule powers are limited, or what the village can do is limited by state or constitutional law. So in those cases, if a state statute grants a village the power to do certain things, such as locations or types of uses of cannabis in this particular case, the village, pursuant to our powers here in the village board, can enact an ordinance that mirrors the same provisions that are in state law. The problem is if they change the state law and we all of a sudden are no longer in compliance with the requirements, then we have to go back and find those sections in our ordinance that are out of compliance because the state law has been changed, and then amend all of those. That's the problem with listing and mirroring the state law in our local ordinances. Therefore, it might be better in those circumstances to enact the provisions of the state law in our local ordinance as amended, so if next year the state of Illinois changes some of the provisions in the Cannabis Act as to regulations, and of course, the village does not have the power to enact something that would be in conflict with those provisions generally. If we were to list each and every one of those requirements and the state changed it, we would have to come back before the village and change all the language in our ordinance to comply with the new state law. Whereas if we were to enact the cannabis ordinance today in which the village incorporates the state laws, it may be amended in the future, those tasks would not fall upon the village every time the state might amend the State Cannabis Act. So that's why we try to make a distinction in what the regulations are, whether the village possesses home rule power or not, and conform our drafting of our ordinances accordingly. In this particular case, staff and the legal department believe it would be much more beneficial to incorporate the regulations of the state of Illinois in our ordinance by reference, as opposed to listing them all. And that's a very long story as far as what Jim said, why we were editing some of the specific provisions that were in the first draft of the ordinance.
Thank you. I assume if we wanted to do something that was more restrictive than the state, we would be under the reasonability factor?
No, if the state says we can't do it, it
can't
doesn't
do it.
matter how reasonable it might be, you can't do it.
Makes it a lot simpler.
And that is, exactly, I mean, I know from the podium, the mayor had mentioned much earlier in this process that we don't have a lot of discretion, and the state's telling us what we can do and what we cannot do. And I think that general rule still applies.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, trustee Palafis.
Oh, Anna can go first.
Oh, you go first.
So Pete, thanks for all the work you guys did on getting this done. I know it's a heavy lift. I would have preferred to see that we took a position, as discussed, closer to high schools, grade schools, and places of worship. Specifically, the area by Higgins and Roselle, the far area where Higgins and Golf cross, I think is too close to Hoffman Estates High School. Just again, my opinion. I also think the western area, you guys did a nice job at cutting around the church there, out off of Beverly and 90 for Life Changers. And I'm confused, although I'm sure there's good reason, why the north side of the undeveloped properties, that are under consideration are shaded out behind Apple Villa and some of those.
On the Barrington Road corridor?
Yeah, in the Barrington Road corridor. The others, from a commercial perspective, minus those inputs, I could see the merit in. But being, and the reason I bring up the schools and the houses of worship comment is it leaves for argument later, which I was trying at great lengths to avoid. But I see your point in terms of everything's a special use, and we'll just kick it down the road and argue later, which is a safe staff position. but I thought we were going to go with some stake in the ground, if you will, for a certain amount of meters from schools or house of worships, which we clearly didn't. But again, I realize it's a lot of work. Thanks for you and your staff to do all that.
Trustee Noel?
Okay, so just so that I understand this clearly, right now, we're just preparing ordinances in accordance with whatever the state is handing down to us.
We'd be approving the Planning Zoning Commission report, and the final ordinance will be drafted in the next couple of weeks.
Right, but if we could, Exhibit A as attached to Mr. Genera's memo of November 22nd. So if the motion maker would accept that, in essence, it would be approving the Planning and Zoning Commission report with the ordinance referenced as Exhibit A on the November 22nd, with the amendment that it's the ordinance that attached to the November 22nd memo, Exhibit A.
I also believe it would be proper to say that the substance of the cannabis ordinance that's before you tonight, we assume the board is going to approve, in effect, the substance of it. So the maps that are attached tonight would be the maps that would appear in 2 weeks. And for the most part, 90% or 95% of the language in the ordinance is going to be the language that's going to be presented in 2 weeks. So I think it was the intent in bringing this before the board tonight that all discussions and decisions would be made as to the substance. And basically between now and 2 weeks from now, staff in the legal department would just get all the wording in the proper form.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Did Trustee Gata make the motion? And
Yes.
clerk, does Trustee Gata and Newell concur with the explanation that
Yes.
Corporation Counsel gave? Okay. Is there any further discussion on this? Anybody in the audience have anything they want to say? If not, we do have a motion and a second. Can you poll the board, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
No.
Trustee Stanton?
Nay.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you very much for all your hard work, Chairperson Combs and your commission also. Thank you. Okay, move on to additional business. A, request board approval of a resolution creating the 4th of July Commission of the Village of Hoffman Estates with a decrease in membership from 15 to 9. Chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, can you pull the board, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Nay.
Is it nay?
Nay.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
No.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. Move on to 8B, request board approval of the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Hoffman Estates and Teamsters Local 700 Public Works for the period January 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2025. Chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. I think this is a great agreement for both the village and the Teamsters Local 700, and I thank Deputy Manager O'Malley for all the hard work he put into this, and the members of the bargaining unit also. We do have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, can you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. Chair would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, motion carried. We are adjourned.